It is July 31st, 2024, and from the assassination of the political chief for Hamas in Tehran, which Israel refuses to comment on, to Israel bombing the suburbs of Beirut and targeting a Hezbollah commander there just one day ago. It has been a constant stream of breaking news that is also serving as a reminder that we are watching Netanyahu ramp up tensions in the region. He is pushing Hezbollah, Iran, Yemen, all to a place where they are being forced to respond after the axis of resistance as a whole has made it clear that they do not want a regional war. All they want is for Israel to put an end to its ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. And as we're seeing, Israel is just refusing to move forward with a simple ceasefire as Hamas has presented proposal after proposal. Instead, Netanyahu seems to want a much wider war to take away from the complete failure of his to eliminate Hamas in Gaza. And yet, as all of this is happening, we have to wonder just how much of this was given the green light when Netanyahu made his glory trip to the US last week. And what are we in for when it comes to the response that we do get from the resistance? Well, we discussed all of that and more with a special guest earlier, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Dr. Ramzy Baroud, a Palestinian-American journalist, author, and editor of the Palestine Chronicle. Dr. Baroud, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Now, I want to get your take on the latest here. I know that there has been a lot happening over the last 24 hours, but one of the most recent updates is that Hamas political chief Ismail Haniyeh has been killed in the Iranian capital of Tehran, with Iran's Revolutionary Guard saying he was targeted at his residence while visiting Iran to attend the inauguration of the nation's new president. Now, this is really a shocking attack. I know that Israel hasn't commented on it. The assumption is that Israel was behind it, but what was your reaction when you heard this news?
Honestly, it took me by surprise, and I know it sounds strange to say that anything that Israel does these days takes anyone by surprise, but this particular one did. Because Ismail Haniyeh is not a military leader, does not make decisions regarding war or resistance or releasing captives or holding them. He is essentially he is a diplomat, and he has been quite a good one, despite the fact that his roots, and his career not really been centered in diplomacy, did not receive any academic training in the field. He was a simple teacher in a refugee camp in Gaza that kind of rose in ranks, became the dean of a university in Gaza, and kind of went directly into politics after the elections of 2006. And he kind of learned on the job in a sense. In fact, I do remember back in the day that many have kind of belittled him, that this is a preacher in a mosque, in a local mosque, a refugee who continued to live in his same house in the refugee camp where his family were expelled, or to which his family were expelled many years ago. He continued to live in that refugee camp, living the same simple life that he did before he became the prime minister of Palestine. But he was not really taken serious by anyone. Yet, in a sense, he kind of proved everyone wrong. And to see that he was really the main engineer behind the Beijing declarations, for example, getting China to be one of the main mediators in the factional divides among Palestinians, and to actually have that effort culminate to the Beijing Declaration. I think it was in July 23, that just few days before he was killed, like a week before he was killed, shows that the massive transformation in Ismail Haniyeh's character. And I think in many ways that was extremely upsetting for Israel. But why kill a diplomat? Why kill a politician? And that's really the big question. And that's why I said it took me by surprise, in the sense that it seems that Israel has failed to locate any kind of Hamas individuals that could, eliminate in Israel's lexicon in Gaza. They completely failed. 10 months of a relentless genocide in Gaza, and they couldn't really achieve anything of value as far as killing Palestinian leaders on the ground. And the last failed attempt was in Khan Yunis a few weeks ago, when they killed and wounded literally hundreds of Palestinian refugees in a displacement camp in the Mawasi area near Khan Yunis, saying, well, we were targeting Muhammad al-Daif and it seems that we have missed him, and that sort of thing. I don't think Muhammad al-Daif was even there in the first place. But in any case, it just shows how pathetic the Israeli military efforts have become. But to go after Ismail Haniyeh within a diplomatic atmosphere. I mean, we are talking about the inauguration of the Iranian president, delegations from all over the world, mainly from the global south. It was almost like a diplomatic party. The degree of boldness, the degree of complete carelessness about international protocol, let alone international law and customs, shows that Israel has reached the absolute point of madness in its war against the Palestinians, which challenges everyone involved. I mean, I think Iran, Hezbollah, and everybody, they have possibly the greatest challenge they have faced since the last 10 months.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I appreciate the background on Hania because I feel like that's something that's getting missed by a lot of this media coverage. And there seems to be this trend, and I would say that it is very intentional, especially here in the West, to kind of conflate anything Hamas related in to being just the military wing, right? They don't talk about the political wing, they don't talk about anything else related to Hamas. And so to talk about this assassination and to not pay attention to the fact that this was a diplomat, this was a political chief, he was not involved with the military. And exactly as you pointed out there, I mean, if Israel is turning to this level, then it seems like almost this desperate attempt to turn the attention away from the fact that they have not eliminated Hamas in Gaza. They haven't gotten close. They've looked incredibly ridiculous every time that they reinvade a new area in which they previously claimed that Hamas was eliminated from it. And for this to happen in Tehran, I feel like is no coincidence, right? It is very much sending that message that as Netanyahu has tried, I know he was just in the United States last week and got a sickening amount of support from the US Congress. But how do you view I guess what Netanyahu's goal is here, because obviously he's targeting a diplomat, but yes, he's also targeting him in Tehran and rising those tensions all around.
Well, if we are to think about this from, like everyday diplomacy in the Middle East prior to Netanyahu, let's marginalize Netanyahu here for a minute and think about this. There's a new Iranian president. We have been told that he's a reformer, that he is keenly interested in ending the sanctions on Iraq, and he is open to dialogue. The political discourse in the Middle East, various newspapers and TV programs have been talking about what should the Iranian president expect. So does he want a Trump or a Kamala Harris in office? That's kind of type of diplomacy, kind of quite a rational kind of discussion. What is beneficial, what's not beneficial. The man hasn't, as of yet, fully articulated a political discourse. I mean, he hasn't even made introductions to himself, neither to the region nor internationally, aside from a few tweets and few statements here and there. You come on the day, and so that's rational diplomacy. So what do you do in a situation like this? You just wait. You wait until your enemy or your rival develops a political position. Then you kind of start staking your claims. You start attacking or agreeing, finding the common ground. What Netanyahu has done, and this is really the degree of unprecedented madness of Netanyahu and his government, is just before we even met this new president, before we even familiarize ourselves with how to pronounce his last name, you come and you attack a delegation that is coming to attend the inauguration of the president. And diplomats are all around. Some of the diplomats were in the same building, and others were all around the area. You come and you kill him right there. And you are sending a message to Iran. I'm trying to provoke you to the president, I have no patience of you being a reformer. I am expecting hardline politics from Iran because I want a regional war with Iran. I don't want any space for diplomacy, for common grounds. I don't expect you to say anything that could be favorable to whomever is going to be the next president of the United States. That so maybe the Americans will find common ground with Iran, reactivate the Iran nuclear act. None of this. Within hours, I will come and I will declare that I will push you to the corner where you have no other option but to retaliate. And they have to retaliate. First of all, this is a humiliation for Iran to come and if you are familiar with Persian and Arab cultures, Middle Eastern cultures, the hospitality and the protection of their guests is very, very essential, is a pillar of these cultures. This is why in the various statements made today by Khamenei and by others within the Iranian government, they spoke about the guest. You killed our guest in our own home. If we were gonna forgive or let go or navigate this in a diplomatic way because of our strategic interest. We can't do it when you come and kill our guests. And I think Netanyahu knows that very well. I mean, Israel has been in the Middle East for 75, 76 years. They know very well how Iranian cultures operate. So now Iran has to retaliate. And by the way, there is still the retaliation of Hezbollah for the attack on one of their leaders yesterday. We don't know the fate of that leader, but still, that is something in the works. Oh, and I forgot something else. There is another debt that needs to be paid to Ansarullah in Yemen for the bombing of the city of Hodeidah and the destruction of the port. So Israel is adding all of these things as if they are saying, I am making it very clear I'm not interested in any ceasefire agreements. I want Hamas to leave that. And of course, American media is going to blame it on Hamas. I mean, you killed the former prime minister of Palestine and the leader of Hamas. And of course, American media is going to blame Hamas if they say, you know what, we're not going to do ceasefire talks anymore. Because Palestinians, are, under no circumstance, should have the kind of political agency as far as American media and, and politicians are concerned. But now Ansarullah needs to retaliate. Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran. I mean, this is the perfect recipe for a regional war. And honestly, I've been commenting and analyzing this subject, not just in the last 10 months, for years and years. I don't see a way out of it. I don't see a way out of the regional war if that was indeed Netanyahu's intention. And it is.
Yeah, and it almost seems like, I mean, taking it even back to the US and the position that they're in. I mean, we have basically a lame duck president. I guess you could describe Biden as that way. And then you have two, other individuals vying for the presidency. You've got Trump, who's extremely pro-Israel and extremely anti-Palestinian, as he's proven to be. And then at the same time, you have Kamala Harris, who's extremely pro-Israel, and we don't really know what else she has other than rhetoric. So it almost feels as though Netanyahu is going, okay, if I have the opportunity to get away with whatever I want to do, that's exactly what I'm going to do. But yeah, I mean, as you're pointing out there, when it comes to everything Israel has done just in the last, well, I guess 24 hours, but maybe we'll add a couple days, it is almost just shocking to see. It's like, okay, now Iran has to respond in some way. Hezbollah has to respond, as you brought up there. The fact that Israel just bombed a suburb in Beirut, I mean, that is shocking as well. It's almost shocking to me that Israel is acting so brazenly. And I say that even after, 10 months of watching them carry out massacre after massacre, targeting the Palestinian people in Gaza in ways that just feel unimaginable, and yet they continue to ramp up those tensions. When it comes to the axis of resistance as a whole, as we've seen, I would say there's been a lot of patience, a lot of really a strategic approach to this coming from Ansarullah, Hezbollah, Iran as a whole. They've made it clear, look, we don't want a regional war. we do want you to stop with your genocidal war against the Palestinians. That's what we're fighting for. But we don't want this to spill out into an entire regional war. So, what are your concerns for the way that things stand now and kind of the response that Israel is provoking from all sides here?
I think something fundamentally changed, Rachel, in the Netanyahu's visit to Washington. I'm not sure what exactly that did Netanyahu want to achieve, but it seems that in his mind he did achieve it. And based on his behavior immediately after the end of his visit, in fact, shortly before his abrupt end to his visit, is that he feels that he got it. And I think what he was looking for a blank check. He wanted to show himself as more beloved, more accepted, more validated, uh, as an American politician. I'm talking about Netanyahu here, not as an Israeli leader, but as an American politician. It seems that he's more popular with American politicians than he is popular amongst his own people, among his own MPs in the Israeli Knesset, among his even own political party, because even his political party, the Likud, is divided between him, Gallant, and others. So he comes to the United States, and we kind of laughed a little bit at the whole standing ovation thing, 39, I think, standing ovations that he received in Congress. And we used it to highlight how bought and sold the American Congress is, how embarrassing that you have a leader that stands there and belittle your own people, attack your own protesters, cause them useful idiots while they are practicing their First Amendment right, and the congressmen stand in jubilation and excitement, and they clap and they clap. It reminds me of the final scene of Animal Farm,
Yeah.
the novel where the pigs and their allies meet at the very end, and all the poor animals are looking from outside, it's like what is going on in there. But this is what it was. But I think in a way we were a bit rash in our analysis. I think exactly what he wanted was not support from Trump or Kamala Harris or others. I think he wanted the standing ovations. And he used the standing ovations to come back to Israel and say, you know what? I have the blank check. The Americans are clapping for me unconditionally, and now I can do exactly what I wanted to do. I can carry out the original plan in which I hesitated and hesitated. I want a regional war, and using that war, I'm going to push the Palestinians out of Gaza. Because if he pushes Palestinians out of Gaza now, there will be an international uproar. Egypt might not allow this. There will be pushback. But if you do this under the guise of a regional war, few are going to pay attention because there's going to be a mess everywhere. And he feels that that mess is worthy of a price if he achieves his ultimate goal of ethnically cleansing the Palestinian people. And the sad spectacle is that he used the Druze, the Syrians who are occupied, living in this town called Majd al-Shams in northern Israel. It's a Syrian town. It's under Israeli occupation the exact same way that the Gaza Strip is under Israeli occupation. And international law recognizes it as such. And the vast majority of the people of this town have refused any Israeli efforts to co-opt him or to give them Israeli citizenship in exchange for them disowning their Syrian identity. So instead of fabricating, and I really do think that this missile that fell on Majd al-Shams was a fabrication. It just doesn't make any sense. Why would Hezbollah, at a time that they are building this massive unity throughout the country, not just with the Sunnis, not just with the Christians, but with the Druze as well. And the leader of the Druze in Lebanon, Walid Jumblat, stands time and again and says, we are with the resistance. You take us in any directions you want to. We trust you and we put our faith in your hand 100%. Why would Hezbollah go and target these very people who are
Mhm.
standing by them? It makes no sense. And to see the reaction to this massacre of children in Majd al-Shams by the most notorious and racist of Israeli politicians. I mean, these are the people who made careers out of hating anyone who's not Jewish. They attack the Arabs, the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims with the same intensity and the same fervor. And suddenly, the likes of Itamar bin Gvir makes a statement, burn Lebanon, kill Hassan Nasrallah, in exchange for killing Jewish children, Muslim children, Arab children. It just doesn't make any sense. But Netanyahu declared his trip is in the US is over. I am back to Israel. It is time for war, if that's what it takes. So clearly the entire spectacle was, kind of engineered on purpose. Let's respond to that by attacking Beirut, even though American officials speaking on condition of anonymity to various media said that Israel will not attack Lebanon, Beirut in particular. It will be a limited attack, to the point that actually some of us may have bought into this, but they attacked Beirut anyway. And they targeted the second or third man in Hezbollah. So and then they kill Ismail Haniyeh. And by the way, just shortly before we started our chat, they bombed the journalists in Gaza near Ismail Haniyeh's house in the Shati refugee camp, who are there to report on his assassination, and they killed two prominent journalists and injured a number of others, including two of Al Jazeera journalists. So
Wow.
Israel is going into the most extreme of its behavior that we have seen. And yes, even by the standards of an actual genocide taking place in Gaza. If the Americans do not rein in Israel, the United States, within the matter of days, will find itself in a war that is far bigger than its invasion of Iran.
Yeah, wow, that is I didn't know that about the journalists who were just killed, and my heart goes out to them. I mean, they are doing the hardest job right there on the ground, and to think that they've been targeted as Israel has targeted just an unprecedented amount of journalists as well as civilians. And lastly, I wanted to ask you about the situation with the Palestinians right now, because I mean, as we're, and I'm really glad you brought up that point about kind of the chaos that Israel is creating everywhere, right? Because it's like we're looking at Hezbollah, we're looking at Iran, and with so much going on, what's being left has been the Palestinian people, who are going on 10 months now of this just awful blockade, constant bombardment, and now Israel's new strategy of forcing them to go, I shouldn't even say new, but their current strategy of forcing them to go from one area to the next, and forcing them to, become refugees all over again, going to somewhere where there are no resources that will actually help them. What are your concerns for where the Palestinians are right now? How much longer they are able to hold on under the current predicament? Because even if Israel starts all of these different conflicts, that doesn't mean that there is any meaningful relief still for the Palestinians in Gaza.
Absolutely. I mean, when the war started, we started kind of creating these thresholds, as in, if this continues, Gaza is going to run out of electricity in this number of days, or clean water, or medicine, or food. Well, all of these thresholds and limits have been reached a long time ago. I don't understand how Gaza is even surviving at this point, if you call that survival. It is worse than anything that the Palestinian people have been through. And I also think that it has crossed all the limits of a human endurance. So this is a new territory for us, not only as Palestinians or Gazans, but as a human beings. I mean, how how much can you go without food or medicine or freedom, or running from one place to the other? And the saddest thing, I mean, Israel was in East Khan Yunis, in southern Gaza. They were there for a good number of days. They left. Hundreds of bodies were mutilated in the streets. They leave, and the people, take their mattresses and their pillows and blankets and go back, and they collect the dead, and they put them in a mass grave, and they go back to the same homes. Some of them, most of them are no longer standing. They pitch their tents beside their homes, and they wait for the new Israeli order for them to evacuate. And they do. They either go to Deir al-Balah or to Rafah or to Mawasi area, where they get shelled there, massacred there, and they keep going back and forth and back and forth. I don't have words anymore. I really don't know what can be said. I mean, I want to talk about how proud I am of how resilient my people are. I want to explain to your listeners the concept of sumud and how, the steadfastness of the Palestinians, the legendary steadfastness of the Palestinians. But it's reaching a point that I don't even understand anymore. I don't understand anymore. I hear from my relatives once in a while, from my sister in Khan Yunis once in a while, and she just very quick comments. I want to live enough so I can see you, or see your children, or just things like there is death that's hovering all over Gaza. No one is immune. No one. Not a group of people, not a gender, not a category, not a profession, not anybody who is immune to this. And we're watching and we comment, and sometimes we take the time to put a social media post out there, but they are left ultimately alone. And again, even by the poor standards of the international community that left Palestinians alone for 76 years, you would think that this time is going to be different, because we are talking about extermination per the language of the International Criminal Court, genocide per the language of the International Court of Justice. So if you are aware of the fact that it is genocide and it is extermination, why not a single country, why not a single army, with a single entity taking any meaningful action to end this genocide? I don't understand anymore.
Yeah, I know. Getting to this point, I mean, it just feels unimaginable that the international community would not do more to step in, as we're literally watching a genocide being live streamed before our very eyes, and yet so little is being done. I think that it is definitely going to be remembered, when we look back at this time in history and we remember the countries, the groups that did fight and that did something, at least what they could do for the Palestinians, versus those that did not and that decided to literally stand up and applaud someone like Netanyahu after welcoming him into their chamber, knowing that he is, well, will eventually be pursued for war crimes charges if the ICC can get it together on their end. There is certainly a lot at stake here all around, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down all of the latest here. Dr. Ramzy Baroud, a Palestinian-American journalist, author, and editor of the Palestine Chronicle. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you very much, Rachel.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. If you want to support my work, you can also check out my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/rachelblevins. That's where you can sign up as a monthly paid subscriber and join the community there. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.